Sometimes the greatest stories of faith are not about the ones who never strayed. They are about the ones who wandered the farthest away, and somehow, against all odds, found their way back home. This is one such story. It is the story of a king named Manasseh. He was born into a world of light and promise. His father was Hezekiah, a good king, a righteous king who loved God and led his people with a steady hand. Manasseh grew up in the palace, surrounded by the songs of praise, the teachings of the prophets. He saw his father tear down the altars to false gods and restore the true worship in the temple. It seemed certain that this young prince would follow in his father's noble footsteps, carrying the flame of faith for a new generation. He was only 12 years old when the heavy crown of Judah was placed upon his head. A boy, really, a boy tasked with leading a nation. In those early years, you can imagine the weight of expectation. The people looked to him, hoping to see the reflection of his beloved father. The court elders likely whispered advice in his ear, reminding him of Hezekiah's legacy and the path of righteousness that had brought them so much blessing. For a time, perhaps he tried. Perhaps the lessons of his childhood echoed in the halls of his young mind, but a shadow was beginning to grow in the heart of the young king. A curiosity for the forbidden, a desire for a different kind of power. The world outside the palace walls was a complex place. Powerful empires with strange gods and alluring practices surrounded the small kingdom of Judah. The whispers of other beliefs. As Manasseh grew into his power, he made a deliberate and decisive turn away from the faith of his father. It was not a slow drift, but a full-blown rebellion. He looked at all the righteous reforms Hezekiah had put in place, and he methodically tore them down. He rebuilt the high places. He filled Jerusalem with idols, erecting an altar to Baal, erecting an altar to Asherah in the countryside and in the courtyards of the Lord's temple. It was an act of profound defiance, a direct insult to the God of his ancestors. His descent did not stop there. He delved into the darkest practices of surrounding nations. The palace became a hub for dark arts and forbidden knowledge. For every action, there is a reaction. This is a law not just of physics, but of the moral universe as well. Manasseh had sown decades of wickedness, and the time had come to reap the harvest. The mighty Assyrian Empire, the dominant power of the age, turned its attention toward Judah. The Lord, the Bible says, brought the army commanders of the king of Assyria against them. The very forces Manasseh may have tried to appease through his pagan worship now became the instrument of his downfall. The battle was swift and decisive. The Assyrian forces overwhelmed Manasseh's defenses. He was taken, not as a respected rival, but as a common criminal. The Assyrians put a hook in his nose. They bound him in bronze shackles, the heavy chains a stark symbol of his complete and utter defeat. The man who had once commanded an entire nation was now a helpless captive, stripped of his crown, his robes, and his dignity. He was dragged away from his palace, away from Jerusalem, away from the land he had so thoroughly corrupted. He was taken to the foreign city of Babylon, a place far from his home and his God. He was utterly and completely alone, left with nothing but the crushing weight of his own sins. It is often in our lowest moments that we are finally able to see the truth. In the cold, dark loneliness of a Babylonian prison, something began to shift within Manasseh. Stripped of all his power and pride, he had nowhere to turn but inward. The years of arrogance melted away. He was no longer a king. He was a prisoner. He was no longer a master of dark arts. He was a broken man. In this place of ultimate humiliation, he finally began to see himself for who he truly was. He remembered the stories of his father, Hezekiah. He remembered the God his father had served, the God he had so viciously rejected. In his great distress, the Bible says, he sought the favor of the Lord his God. This was the turning point. In an act of incredible grace, God was moved by the king's plea. The Assyrians released him, and he was allowed to return to Jerusalem.